Today we're speaking with Dr. Charles Pelagi. He was a scientist in good standing. Then he became a Christian and some problems started. What happened?
Well, 2 years after I was promoted to senior lecturer and I had tenure, I suddenly became a Christian, and I could see that scientifically the Bible made more sense than evolution theory in terms of the origin of life and the formation of complex creatures like butterflies and birds and crocodiles. And so I began to research that, and I was so convinced that I began to tell my colleagues in the department about it, what I had discovered.
How did they react?
Well, they just wouldn't listen. They were all committed to evolution theory, and they were indignant that I even dared to question it. And so I began to mention it to students. I mentioned it once in class, and that I got severely reprimanded for that. And so that went on for about a year, and I got nowhere, and yet I thought my scientific evidence was really good. So eventually I decided to publish my views in the Melbourne Age as an editorial. And then a controversy went on between myself and the university for the next 2 weeks. And the public joined in with their letters, and many suggested that I should be fired from staff because there should be no creationist on scientific staff at any university in Australia.
So creationism is unscientific in their view?
Yes, but I had a fair bit of scientific evidence, but nobody amongst my colleagues would sit down and listen. And until that time, I had packed audiences at conferences. And when at a conference I mentioned that that things look designed in nature, even Sir Rutherford Robertson, who was a close friend of mine, rebuked me for believing in the Bible and wouldn't speak to me again. And that was the norm for the next 28 years. Certainly the first 15 years, the response on campus was so horrific that it was like living in a nightmare.
How so?
Well, for example, the professor would come along and shout into my office so that everybody in the corridor could hear that I'm going to fight you and your God to the death. Because I'd asked him, about the fossil which he displayed on his desk, and I asked him, how do you know that that fossil is 3 million years old? And he just went livid, because I had information on radiometric dating that he didn't want to hear about.
And what are some of the other ways that they gave you flack?
Oh, well, somebody behind my back told my technical assistant that not to cooperate with me, and I would have to run after him in the corridor just to give him instructions. He'd lock himself into his room. Then 2 heads of departments, the dean and the head of school, had a meeting with me to coerce me to resign from my job and join a seminary instead. And the first thing they did was to criticize and ridicule the Bible. And then when I wouldn't, they said, oh, well, just be prepared to take a lot of flack from now on.
And so you experienced flack of various kinds for 28 years?
For 28 years, although in the latter years things became better because my chief antagonist, the dean and head of department, passed away. And the new heads of departments in the Victorian Department of Agriculture was very kind because they were indifferent to creation, and we agreed to disagree on matters of faith. So they supported me. But at the end, things went sour through a mistake I made, and the head of department ordered all my viral constructs to be destroyed, even those that I'd prepared with a famous scientist from Israel who was attracted to my work. It was going to be used at the University of Nebraska, University of Queensland, and the Australian National University. Everything had to be destroyed, seeds, all the materials in the fridge, and I lost everything as a result.
And that never would have happened if you weren't a Christian, you believe?
If I hadn't been a Christian, if they hadn't hated me, if I could use that word, they would have never dared to do that to any other scientist on campus.
And how can people learn more about what you went through?
Well, thanks for asking that, because I do have a website, www.creation6000.com, where I've explained all of this in greater detail.
One more time.
creation6000.com.